Hello everybody and welcome to the Derbyshire branch of the British Science Association's first ever podcast. Welcome to Intellectual Interlude. So my name's Ian, I'm a zoologist and I am the secretary of the British Science Association for the Derbyshire branch, and I'm currently a research student at the University of Derby.
I am David and I'm an astrobiologist, which means I research survival in space, particularly bacterial spores. I am also the treasurer of the branch. And with us today, we also have Christina.
Hi. Hello! Hi, I'm the chair of the Derbyshire branch of the British Science Association, and I'm also a zoologist turned science communicator, or something along those lines. So, I'm featuring in today's, and I'm sure that I'll pop up in some other podcasts in the future as well.
Awesome.
Yes, that's the plan.
So, as the chair, why don't you give us an introduction to the British Science Association?
Sure, yeah. So the British Science Association is an organisation whose general mission is to bring science to the public and also to help the public have more access to and influence over science and its future. So we as a branch, we support that by doing all sorts of events, like, for example, we do public talks, we do run pub quizzes, school events, all sorts, and now podcasts.
Yes.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Excellent. So the aim of this podcast is to do a weekly-ish podcast of things that have perked our interest in the science world.
Or piqued our interest, whichever way you like.
So, why don't you start us off for this week, David?
Okay, so the big news of this week, as I'm sure you guys are well aware, is the return of British astronaut Tim Peake.
Oh, yes.
My hero. He has returned from the International Space Station after like 5 or 6 months or something like that.
Yes, it was a 6 month trip.
6 month trip. So he went on the 15th of December in 2015, and he returned at the weekend after spending the in-between time in space.
Where has that time gone, seriously?
186 days.
Yeah.
I thought it sounded really long when he went out there, and then all of a sudden he's back.
He's back, yeah. It seems so. Yeah, it's gone incredibly quickly.
It's scary.
I thought I'd prepare some notes for you guys.
Ooh.
So I have got some facts about Tim Peake's journey to become an astronaut.
Ooh.
So Tim Peake was a rotary engine test pilot. He was a major in the army. Obviously, he worked his way up to major and then retired as a major. And he got into flying helicopters straight out of Sandhurst, which is where British army officers train. And yeah, he loved it so much that he wanted to kind of test the limits of new aircraft and stuff, and the limits of like operational capabilities for helicopters. So he worked with the British Army. Obviously, he was employed by the British Army to do that. And then he went over and did some work with the Americans, with their Apaches. And then when he retired, he went to work for a private company who build helicopters. So they obviously want to test their helicopters and prototypes and stuff. At the end of his, it's like a 20-year career in the Army. So he had 20 years in the Army as a test pilot. And then towards the end, the European Space Agency opened up their doors for recruiting astronauts. And it was only the second ever time that they'd ever done that.
Imagine that application.
What?
Yeah.
I mean, what is even on that form to become an astronaut?
I know. I think I've got some facts and figures here, but I didn't write that particular one down. But if I remember correctly, it was like you had to have 1,000 hours flying and have a degree in a natural science, engineering, IT, or maths.
Oh, okay.
So those were the criteria.
And they were at least the basic.
The basic criteria, yeah.
We're nearly there. Then we just need 1,000 hours flying time.
Exactly.
That's quite a long time.
Yes. That was in 2008. There were 8,000 applicants, and it got whittled down to 6, and he was one of 6 selected. And that was through a process of testing focus, concentration, reaction, just general intelligence and charisma and personality. All these kind of tests. It was it sounds like an incredibly rigorous process before you even get selected as an astronaut. And then when he did, he trained for 14 months for his basic training, which was included learning Russian, which he said is...
Wait, learning Russian is just a part of the basic training?
Yeah. Because the 2 languages of the European Space Agency are English and Russian.
So there's a lot of interaction between them.
Yeah.
So I think as NASA astronauts, you have to learn Russian as well because...
Well, everyone takes off
from Kazakhstan, Well,
No.
they're Chinese, but
yeah, they are.
but in the International Space Station, which is basically the operational facility for astronauts at the moment, outside of Earth, because astronauts don't want to really be on Earth. It's going to be Americans, Russians, and Europeans mostly.
Yes.
There are some other like Chinese and Indian things roaming around as well, but we don't really go there. 14 months of that. 2011, he took a 6-day cave course, which scares the bejesus out of me. So this cave, he had to. They just
sounds really cool. Does that scare you?
Yeah.
I'd love to do that.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't like the idea of crawling into somewhere where I don't know for sure what's on the other side. I think that's
That's fair. That's fair.
They had tasks like mapping the cave and taking scientific readings. It wasn't part of their mission parameters, but they managed to find a new species of microbe.
Well,
so at the same time,
and
it was 6 days. They get dropped into a hole and they have to go and explore the cave for 6 days, and then they come back.
Okay, maybe I rushed into this.
Yeah.
Maybe 6 hours would be fun.
Yeah. So they had to live there. They had to survive there. They had minimal rations, so they had to like make their rations last, or like find things to eat. I guess bugs and stuff under there. Insects.
Lick moss off of rocks.
Doesn't sound particularly tasty.
Yeah, maybe. See, this is why he's the astronaut and I'm not.
He then got spacewalk certified. That's hard to say than I imagine. And then in 2012, he was part of NEMO, which is NEEMO, so 2 A's, which is an underwater mission for 12 days that NASA had set up, and he got selected for it. And they dropped a capsule underwater and then the environment was to simulate something to do with NASA landing on astronauts, but it also gave all space agencies a chance to test the abilities. I can see your face.
You did just say NASA landing on astronauts.
Oh, did I? Oh, God.
I was hoping you'd pick up on it, honestly, but I want to know what NASA's next mission is then.
NASA weren't landing on astronauts. That's a good way of making sure nobody ever applies to be an astronaut. No, they were landing on asteroids. Okay, so after that, he spent 6 months at mission control, and then he went into space. Oh, he got selected to go into space. It took another 3 years from that point.
That's fantastic.
And he was selected for the Principia mission.
Frustrating.
And then
that's a lot of training to wait for a build-up to then possibly not be selected.
Yeah, exactly.
It's quite a disappointment as well. I mean, building yourself up being an astronaut.
Are you technically an astronaut before you've gone into space? No, so you can get all the training. Say I'm going to be an astronaut.
There are very strict criteria to being called an astronaut, which is why some people go into space and they don't class as astronauts. Because I think you have to do, you have to spend a certain amount of hours. You have to go to a certain height, and you have to do a certain amount of rotations. I think you have to complete a full rotation around Earth at a certain height and be in the sky for a certain amount of time, if I remember correctly. But I didn't research.
I think that would annoy me more if I got into space and then wasn't classed as an astronaut when I came back down. That would really.
I think there are some people who have paid money to be astronauts, like to go up into the International Space Station for a few days, so they complete all of the criteria to be classed as astronauts. And then somebody who's trained for like 20 years can go up in like a low orbit for a day or something, or less than a day, to conduct some kind of mission and then come down, and they're not an astronaut.
That sucks.
Oh, that's sad.
And then he did his famous spacewalk in January 2006 when Tim Peake noticed water in his helmet, so had to call off the spacewalk, but they managed to fix what they were outside of everything to fix.
Oh, excellent.
Sounds terrifying to be outside of everything, but I'd like to give it a try, if I'm honest.
Again, similar to the cave thing. Not super
I'm
happy
okay
about
with
being left out somewhere where I'm not certain I'll come back.
Yeah, I'll agree on that one. That doesn't sound like so
Oh no, that sounds amazing to me. I'd love to just float around space. I mean,
forever
tethered to something, but yeah. So some key stats about Tim Peake's mission when he was up in space in the ISS. He completed 3,000 orbits, which is a lot of orbits, and 125 million kilometers, which is an extremely long way.
It's just beyond anything you could comprehend.
Yes.
You can't really picture that far.
No,
it's a very abstract number.
Yeah.
Wait, no, I think I think the distance to the moon from Earth is like 250,000 kilometres. So check that, but it might be almost exactly halfway. So whilst Ian fact checks that, he was also the 8th Briton in space, but he's the first British European Space Agency astronaut. So he's the first person to go up under the flag of Britain.
Oh, okay.
As an astronaut. Oh, it's 384,000 kilometres. So
384,000 kilometres.
To the moon, yeah. So it's about a third. Yeah, it's about a third of the distance.
So Tim Peake
million kilometres. Oh my god! Wow.
Tim Peake could have gone to the moon and back.
back.
A lot.
Yes.
Yes, a few times.
Many,
Yeah, like
many
4
times.
times. Yeah. No, even more than that.
Do you reckon he
My math's
wishes he
pretty
did
bad.
that instead?
Sorry?
Do you reckon he wishes he did that instead?
No, I don't know. The ISS is pretty cool.
It is.
Yeah.
It is very cool.
Interestingly, if the International Space Station was directly above London, it would be closer than Glasgow is to London, or even Scarborough is to London.
Oh, really?
So
Well,
that's
that
weird.
is weird.
Yeah. Okay.
Not completely comfortable with that thought.
It's 250 miles.
Yeah, that's really not that far, considering the distances of space.
No.
It's technically not that. It's not.
So this is
Like
between
max orbit.
Earth and the International Space Station.
Yeah.
It's only 250 miles.
Mm.
Wow.
It's actually quite a low orbit. There's a lot of satellites above that.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's insane.
So he's come back.
Yes.
And now
Happy he's back safe.
he's
because
going to
it's a stressful
be
thing.
famous for the rest of his life.
Yes, he will.
Yeah.
He's never ever going to have to worry about money ever again. More importantly, he's obviously
There is that.
laid a benchmark for like an entire generation of school children.
Yes. What
Yeah.
what an inspiration for the up and coming
It has.
kids in
Yeah.
education.
Yeah.
Something
it has
to
been
aim for, like,
fantastic.
It's not an abstract thing now. You don't have to be an American to be an astronaut. Like
Yes,
I always
exactly.
thought when I was growing up, there was always
Yes.
Americans. But yeah,
Yes. How fantastic.
it's amazing.
I'm going to bring things from a low orbit to a slightly higher orbit and then come crashing back down. I'm going to talk about the KT extinction.
Oh, okay. High
Yes.
orbit. Yeah. Okay.
Started off high and then crashed into the planet and killed everything. But the thing I want to talk about is it killed more than we thought it did.
So this is a Cretaceous Tertiary
Yes. So
extinction.
this is a 66 million years ago. There are some disagreements in it, but current theory is a large meteor crashed into the planet and wiped out a lot of life. Specifically, or what is traditionally associated with it, is the dinosaurs were no more after
Death
this
of the
point.
dinosaurs.
Which sucks if you're a dinosaur. Quite good if you're a person, because dinosaurs are scary. Yes.
Yeah.
So
See Jurassic Park.
the thing that was interesting about this article is it was actually claiming that mammals did worse off in it than we originally thought. So while we thought that mammals actually got off quite lightly, because there wasn't the advantage mammals had at that point is we weren't very big, because dinosaurs had that niche covered.
So we're pretty lucky we weren't humans alongside the dinosaurs
Yes,
back
we
then,
would-
because
we
we
would
would have
not.
taken quite a knocking.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I reckon we wouldn't be here. So with this extinction, it's this article that was posted is actually saying that they reckon that 93% of all mammals on the planet were wiped out in this extinction as well, which is much higher than originally thought, and is crazy considering how well they did afterwards. It was actually suggested that mammals did much worse than lizards, than turtles, and then the crocodilians as well.
Okay.
So the mammals themselves were actually hit harder than these groups, but managed to adapt to the situation much better and expanded much faster than them.
Oh.
So they actually think that they were saying that mammals actually got back to their full level of diversity within 300,000 years, which seems like a long time, but in terms of evolution, that's incredibly fast. Incredibly fast to have speciated out to have the same level of diversity before an extinction event that wiped out a massive amount of life on the planet.
I suppose it does open up all those niches.
It does,
so many.
but to fill them that quickly
Yeah.
is fascinating.
It's really interesting how we got knocked down so badly, but then actually used that, basically, mammals as a whole used that to their advantage in a way, in evolutionary terms, to actually make more mammals in the long run.
Yeah.
Yes, which it's crazy to think that. I think it's fascinating for two reasons. In that we got hit so hard and came back so fast, which is one of the reasons why mammals basically run the planet now.
Yeah. The KT went from the
era of reptiles to
reptiles to mammalian dominance over the resources on the planet. Yeah.
Yes, which is
wow.
One in particular.
quite a significant event.
Does it say anything in the article about how, like, what have any of the parameters moved? Because one of the parameters I heard was that I'd read this is years ago, is that anything under the mass of 25 kilos survived the KT. They were better placed to survive the KT, and basically everything above 25 kilos was obliterated in terms of terrestrial animals. So has that threshold been lowered? That's where that extra number has come from for the mammals.
I honestly don't know. It didn't say anything about specific weights. They didn't seem to like going into specific details of what actually caused the survival. Yeah. These guys were mostly looking at North America, or at least what is currently North America, and looking at the distribution of fossils across that. Because the joy of fossils is also a slight annoyance, but the rarer a species, the less likely you are to find it in a fossil. So the more common the species, the more likely you are to find it in a fossil. But that means you can tend to get a fairly decent idea of species diversity at a point in time. Because if you're at one area and you only ever find two types of animals, then there probably wasn't a large amount. But if you find a deposit and there's lots, then you can imagine it was a thriving ecosystem. So what they were saying is that the original estimations were made on a much more constricted data set. And
so it's based on less fossils.
Yes, so as more have been discovered, and they've started comparing them to regions as well. Yeah. Then you can see that in each place the diversity actually dropped quite a lot. Oh. But another interesting thing is they were saying that the diversity dropped, but differently in different places. So it's not saying that they weren't around at the time, but it's not saying that all cats survived. It was saying that there was a massive amount of diversity lost, but cats might have survived here, but not over there.
Okay, right.
Okay, yeah.
So, is this a case of there are more fossils now, that they can get a picture now, or was it just a more extensive study that they've done this time around?
They didn't talk about any new methods or any new finds. Okay. It seemed to be there is a larger library now to look into.
Oh, right.
And it seemed that so as they've been looking into this as well and discovering stuff, they've also been able to use the fossils from before, and there's now a much larger,
more fossils to go at.
More larger data set. Sorry, that was a horrendous sentence. Yes, there's much more to look at, and the thought of 93% of mammals going out meant that we came rather close as well.
Yeah.
What do we reckon that lizards would have taken back over if the mammals had gone far enough down, or do you reckon it would have been someone else's turn?
Oh, that's interesting. Ooh. Well, maybe the land would have just been completely cleared, and then
in the age of fish.
Well,
yeah,
we're all fish. So you just reverse, like, however many, what would it be, about, like 400 million years.
Yeah.
To the Cambrian, or even before that, when fish emerged, and then you just try again.
And of course, there's so much chance in it that trying again wouldn't mean, rebuilding back up to us by any means. It would be completely different.
Slave. Yeah, we could have ended up with the lizard people that run Parliament, and
yes,
some people say run Parliament.
Yes,
that's weird. So I wonder if, again, does it say anything in the article? Does it suggest that the KT, the impact of the asteroid, that directly had more of an impact, or are they suggesting that there was more of a kind of an after effect in the few hundred years afterwards, or even the days afterwards, where they hadn't accounted for?
The time period that they're looking at is really quite large. Well, if they're saying that the recovery took about 300,000 years, then they're at least looking at a fossil record up until that point, 300,000 years later.
Mm.
Unfortunately, because of how the whole preserving animals work, I think it's very hard to tell whether it occurred at the event or 1,000 years after the event, but because of causes from it, such as the extreme weather caused by it, and the blackouts, and the
Well, I was thinking more of just on a more simplistic level of there being like a predator-prey imbalance.
They did have one discussion about predator-prey imbalance in that because a lot of life had been destroyed, they hypothesized that the only life that did survive would be smaller mammals preying on insects that were eating the decayed plant matter. So it was looking at they seemed to suggest that if you were an insectivore, you probably had a better chance because there was probably more of them around compared to everything else.
Oh, interesting.
So I'm going to go with insects save the day again.
I wonder how much of an impact that would have had downstream on things like invertebrate life and like fish.
I'm sure it was colossal.
Because as mammals expanded, they would have become... So the dinosaurs would have predated on mammals, but now there are no dinosaurs and large lizards, and then the mammals expand, and then they have to extend their prey range.
Yes. Well, I imagine a lot of dinosaurs would have preyed on other dinosaurs as well, because mammals weren't much larger than the domestic cat at the point of extinction.
Yeah.
So there probably wasn't there probably was a large enough population of different mammal species to support other species. But I imagine it wasn't all that common to be a specified mammal hunter. I imagine mammals probably dipped into your diet, but I imagine that it was much easier to also hunt smaller dinosaurs as well.
Yeah, but the downstream effect on the other end, where there were few mammals predating on fish and insects, then the mammals blew up and became like basically every predator species on Earth.
Yes.
And suddenly the insects and the fish are being predated on thousands.
I
imagine
they switched to a similar system in which mammals also become the primary prey as well.
Surely, though, the fish and the insects, they would have taken a hammer eventually from there being more mammals, but of course that took 300,000 years. And what was a lot more sudden was most of the mammals getting wiped out and the dinosaurs going with them. So surely in that 300,000 years, they'd have quite a bit of time to kind of bulk themselves back up and have a bit of relief from predators and kind of build their own predator-prey systems. So
super speedy
in a way,
insect,
they had a bit of relief first, which is kind of left us with this balance that we have now.
That's an interesting view of
that.
Yeah. that works well. Yes.
That was a good answer.
Yes. So
okay,
you cleaned up that topic nicely. Speaking of cleaning up,
segue.
Okay, yeah. So the thing that I'm talking about is quite a disaster. Perhaps not on the scale of a Cretaceous tertiary extinction event and meteorites hitting Earth and wiping out all dinosaurs. But still, on a smaller scale, oil spills can be absolutely catastrophic for the environment and for ecosystems, and also for us, to be honest, for the economy and for social reasons. But I think what's really exciting this week is that some new research has come out into a new way of being able to help to clean up oil spills.
Okay.
So what has actually been found is that you can take some nanoparticles. So this is particles that are on a nano scale. We're talking between 1 and 100 nanometers. And just to put that into perspective, a single hair on your head has 75,000 nanometers in its diameter. Okay, so these particles we're talking about are probably about a 3,000th of a hair across. And what they're doing is they're putting these particles into water, and then they stick to oil that's been spilt into the water. But these particles just so happen to be magnetic, because what they are is they're iron oxide. Now, we all more commonly know iron oxide as rust. Okay, so rust is iron oxide. Yeah. But these are tiny particles of iron oxide, which then can be kind of moved around using magnets. So you can put a boat into the water with the oil, which now has iron oxide nanoparticles on it, and you can have a magnet that either attracts the particles and kind of almost pulls the oil onto a plate or something where it can be collected. Or, even more exciting, it can push the oil around. So you don't even get the oil stuck to your boat or whatever. You can kind of group it all in an area where it can actually be collected and still be used. So we're not wasting oil either.
Oh. So that not only helps with the cleanup procedure and the wastage procedure, but it also stops it spreading in currents elsewhere. Because one of the biggest problems is it gets out and then it ends up washing up on beaches, far away and being brought to islands where it was nowhere near, and we end up with this massive spread of it.
Yeah, exactly. So it can be absolutely catastrophic how far out the oil can get, and any help, any new ways that we can clear it up or kind of put it together and reuse it is fantastic. But what I think is quite funny about this is that this was actually found out in Australia at the University of Wollongong, and I apologise if I didn't pronounce that properly, but a researcher challenged a PhD student claimed that he could probably find a way of moving liquids around without using kind of a pump, without actually really touching it, but by using some sort of external force. And his supervisor bet him $100 that he could not do that, and he did it. And that's opened up a huge new avenue of research.
his PhD supervisor said he wouldn't be able to do it.
And do you know what this challenge was for? This was right at the start of his PhD, when they were just kind of challenging him and giving him his PhD supervisor was more just giving him a few funny kind of tasks to help him get used to the lab equipment. And he opened up this whole new avenue of research, which is now like multinational. They're working with China to do this, and it could actually be a really big deal in the future. But it's just brilliant.
Which is supervisor's like, hey, you know that PhD that I want you to do? I bet you can't do it. I bet you $100 you can't do it.
But I mean, the fact that it was just a task set in order to get his mind racing and getting used to the lab equipment and stuff,
exactly.
And the fact that it leads to such a monumental discovery is just it epitomizes how science works in such a wonderful way.
Yeah.
In which you just look at something, you see how it reacts, you decide to look at it closely and have a standardized method to look at it, and you end up with incredible technologies coming out.
Yeah, it just sums it up, doesn't it?
Yeah. All for $100 bet.
There we go. And then, of course, the supervisor's down $100, but he has quite a bit of research under his belt now.
Yeah.
Thanks to this student.
And probably part of the patent. The patent as well is.
But I mean, it's fantastic for the wildlife because, like, for example, birds and animals, one of the main things that oil can do is it can get into the fur or into the feathers, and then just everything that the fur and the feathers are there for is less efficient now. So we're talking kind of keeping them warm, keeping them buoyant on the water, allowing each other to kind of recognise each other by scent. So if baby animals or baby seabirds get covered in oil, then they can often get just abandoned by their parents because they can't even recognise them anymore, they can't smell them. Or if the animals are trying to mate and they're reliant on colours and displays with their feathers, you can't really see that anymore because it's all black. And then, of course, when they're trying to lick it off themselves, they're harming their digestion, the organ failure. Apparently, they get dehydrated.
Yes, so, I can't imagine oil does well for hydrating.
No, it's not brilliant. And this is all sorts of animals, like dolphins, sea otters, fish, birds. So they kind of all have this PhD student to thank, really.
Yeah.
If this becomes a thing, of course, it's still at the research stage at the moment, but I can see this going somewhere.
Yes, and getting it out into industry takes time, and procedures need to be put in place to make sure that it is going to be more helpful.
You need a government or an organisation that says, yes, you can dump this much iron oxide in the sea, and hopefully it will get rid of the oil.
Yeah. One of the big concerns, though, is that this iron oxide might kind of harm something in itself. And of course, we can't be sure, really, with environmental things. It's really hard to see down the path of where the most innocent-looking thing might lead. But iron oxide nanoparticles are already used in medical imaging. So there's humans that have this put into their body and it hasn't done any harm. It seems to be completely
Well, then let's hope they get it off the ground.
I don't know the grain size of iron oxide, but iron oxide on Mars, because that's why it's all red, because of iron oxide. And
I didn't know that, you know.
Oh.
So Mars is kind of rusty.
Yeah, it is.
Mars is a rusty
as an astrobiology student, I look at spore survival on Mars and microbial survival on Mars. So one of the antimicrobial agents on Mars that kind of suggests that maybe not, there won't be life on the surface, is the fact that it's heavily iron oxide. So
okay.
I wonder if this could lead into some of that research then, in looking at the survivability of stuff with high levels of iron oxide.
Yeah, well, I wasn't necessarily thinking for like antimicrobial research. I was thinking of it's obviously got some kind of anti-life, for lack of a better term.
Well, yes, that's what I mean. It will be,
is that
interesting to look into that while it's in an ocean environment and see what effect that has on it. But Yes, I hope that gets put into effect, because it sounds like 100 times better than anything we've currently got going to clean them up, because current clean-up procedure tends to be panic.
Yeah, panic and chemicals being released, which is, I'm surely worse. Certain chemicals.
Chemicals is a broad term.
That's kind of
iron oxide is a chemical.
Yeah, okay. Hands up there. But more harmful chemicals.
Yeah.
Apparently, more harmful chemicals are being released.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah. So a slightly cheerier subject, or cheerier for some, doing better in exams. Although exams is a rather down topic.
Yeah.
I can't see the cheeriness quite yet.
Doing well in them is
doing well. It's a good thing. So go on in, tell us how. Oh, that's my thing, isn't it?
Yeah, you can.
Let me do that. So, our local university, the University of Derby, have released some pioneering research that shows children connected to nature achieve better SAT results. So year 6 is SATs, isn't it?
Yes,
so
there's several rounds of it.
You can also. I also did a set of SATs in year 9, but I'm not sure if they're a thing anymore.
They are. They were, at least. I think there are multiple sets of SATs.
Oh, okay. I think the data set they obtained the results from were specific from year 6 SAT exams.
So the end of primary school.
There's a group of psychologists, and they're commissioned by the RSPB. So there's potentially some bias in proving that nature's useful. Well, I'm sure it is. And so they determine that children who are better connected with nature have better test scores, higher well-being, and pro-nature behaviours.
Okay.
Pro-nature behaviours is an interesting
It
term,
is,
but
yeah.
I like what that
but
implies.
I like this, but I also am a little bit sceptical, because they imply some kind of they want to imply a relationship, like a causality between connectedness to nature and SAT results. But could it just be a demography based thing where you tend to be wealthier as you move out from urban areas, and therefore you intrinsically have more access to nature?
Interesting. Although, is that implying that wealth plays an element in SATs?
Maybe, I don't know, but generally there is an assumption
there were some kids in my school that parents paid for tutors for the SATs.
Oh, that seems a bit too much for year 6. Christ.
Yeah, that is quite a big thing, actually.
Yeah.
In the research, did they talk about how they defined connected to nature? Because that's an interesting term that is quite loose.
I don't remember reading that. I don't think they did. It's just
because I'm sure if you talk to someone who lives in the inner city, and if you talk to someone who is a druid, they will define connected to nature very differently.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, because you could be urban and still be connected to nature.
Yes,
but there is generally, like, I'm generalising a lot, hence the general, but there is generally more access to nature as you move out of urban areas into suburban and then into rural. And obviously, rural education is rural areas are seen as more affluent, and generally speaking, there's like a correlation between access to good education and like test results purely from an academic point of view as you move out from urban areas as well.
I guess
so maybe
I would imagine that when they've done this study, they have taken children from a similar area and they've tried them with these kind of nature.
That's what, the methodology isn't stated, but I hope so. Yeah, that's interesting. Yes. I like the.
Well, it's definitely research that could be built upon.
And
it's useful as a pilot study.
Further.
It's really promising.
I really like the statement that I find quite interesting in that is that it's saying that they have pro-nature behaviours as well. So if you have interactions with nature and the outdoors and an ecosystem acting how it should, then that implies that as you grow up, you're more likely to respect it or perhaps build for it.
Yeah, so even if you take the kind of the SATs, the exams element out of it and the economical element out of it, just that pure fact of like, it seems as though the more kind of access and the more you get involved with nature, the more you're going to support it and care about it throughout life. That in itself, any more evidence for that in itself is a really interesting thing to hear.
I completely agree. And I hope there's more genuine evidence that suggests that more access to nature is a good thing for any reasons.
For kind of funding, like nationwide, really.
It'd be interesting if you then got funding to make urban areas more green as well.
That's true.
Inputting trees and grass roofs. And
London's quite good with that. I don't know about other.
There's almost actually. These are one-off examples that I've heard of, so it's not really like very scientific. Despite we're in this scientific podcast, is that a lot of inner city schools actually, if they go out and make the effort to be more connected to nature, actually do it more so than kind of rural schools. Because I think there's the presumption in rural areas that children already have a lot of access to nature, whereas there are some inner city schools, particularly I've heard of in, say, London, where they're well aware that children aren't getting as much access to it, and they will make the absolute most out of what they do have, whether it's a park or an area within the school. And the children end up studying it and getting involved to a deeper level than they perhaps would do even if they were in a rural area.
This is why in science assuming is bad.
Yes.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Excellent. Well, fascinating. So, in terms of the BSA here in Derby, I'd like to talk about a couple of events we might have coming up soon and what's going on with us. So, in October, we are going to be at the Mini Maker Fair in Derby. And we're also going to be at the Fun Factory event. Where is that, Christina?
Yeah, so in Belper, there's a Fun Factory event, which is quite an artsy event, which we should be at. And then the Mini Maker Fair is at this Derby, the Silk Mill, which is part of Derby Museums in the centre of Derby as well. So there may well be other things springing up in the meantime, but the main thing we're kind of focusing on and that we really like at the moment is to get more people involved and to get loads of volunteers. It's really fun and it's really, satisfying and important being part of the British Science Association, and we'd love to have as many of you as possible on board. So if you'd like to get involved, if you'd like to be a part of any of the future events we are doing, if you'd like to suggest an event, if you'd like to feature in a podcast just like this one, or if you'd even just like to hear from us on a regular basis via email, then there are loads of ways that you can get involved and you can get in touch with us. So we have our Facebook page and we have a Twitter account, we have an email address, and we have the general British Science Association website, which we have a page on as well. So what we'll do is we'll put all of that information, all the links that you need,
links in the description,
into the description of this podcast so that you can get hold of all of those.
Awesome.
Excellent. Well, I hope you've had a very nice time listening, and this has been your Intellectual Interlude.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks very much. Bye.